Wasn't that soothing? Wasn't that just soothing? Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special night of our Facebook Live. It's Thursday night, and tonight we have a special guest, Jill Tokuda, who is running for Congressional District 2, which involves all of the neighbor islands and the rural part of Oahu, a huge, huge district. and I'm really happy and excited to have Jill come on tonight and share her story, share her platform. We want to try and get as many of the candidates on that's willing to come on. I think a lot of them are afraid that they might get bashed, but we make sure no one gets bashed here on the show. So if you're thinking about writing some bashing comments, don't do it. It won't get asked, and it definitely won't be shared on the screen. But we do welcome questions, and she'll be coming on at about 7 o'clock. So just wanted to welcome you all. Guys, we're getting close to the election, getting very close to the primary election, August 13th. Make sure you get your ballots. Make sure if you didn't get a ballot yet, call your elections office from whatever island you're on and find out where that ballot is. If you're not registered, I believe you still can register. So it's very important to vote. And more importantly, to learn about the candidates that you're voting for. I've been getting calls from Kauai people for recommendations for the council or whatever. And what I'm saying is study your candidates. There's many resources out there. Civil Beat did a questionnaire. Star Advertiser did a questionnaire. Garden Island did a questionnaire. Chamber did a questionnaire. There's many questionnaires out there. Most of the candidates have websites with contact information. Reach out to them. Talk to them face to face, heart to heart. Find out before you put the check in the block. I've said for a while now, we are at crossroads in this state. We have an opportunity hi, Patsy. My wife again watching from the living room. We have an opportunity this election to really make a difference and really select the candidates that you feel in your heart that has your best interests in their heart. We got to forget about this name recognition stuff. We got to forget about the popular person or who has more commercials. We got to learn about our candidates, people. Okay. And so we're trying to reach out to as many as we can and get them on our show. But there's other resources. Like I said, Hawaii News Now, they're doing a thing called the job interview. They're doing the job interview on TV. I think tonight is Kai at 8 o'clock. But if you go to the Hawaii News Now app, and I'm not promoting, I'm not an affiliate, but if you have the Hawaii News Now app for your smartphone, download it if you don't have it. But how come no real forums? Thomas Nizo. I don't know, man. I'm the candidate. I don't gotta put one out there, bro. Thomas Nizo out there from the Waimea Theater. Good local brother there. Yeah, man, go put one together. I think it's kind of rushed for the primary, but definitely for the general. But the primary election is going to determine our many of the nominations, the Democratic nomination, the Republican nomination, any other party nomination. So it's critical for the state races, the partisan races is going to be decided on the 13th. So please go out and study your candidates. But yeah, go watch the on the Hawaii News Now app. If you scroll down, it says the job interview. And they spoke with all the candidates, the leading candidates for governor. Thomas, now you asked me on tough question, date of the general. I don't know. It's November 7th or something like that. It's the first Tuesday in November. So we have some time. But the job interview, I got to watch. I watched it on my phone, so I didn't wait for it to come. I watched Kai's and I watched Josh Green. Tonight after the show, I'll watch some of the other candidates. I'm going to get through all of them. But it's quite interesting, that panel of interviewers. It was not an easy interview. If you haven't watched it, you can watch it on TV tonight at 8. Again, it's Kai, but if you go to the app, you can see them all. And it's for the first two that I saw, you'll see. I'm going to tell you straight, in that job interview, unlike a television commercial or a debate where it's really limited to time, you get to learn a lot about these people in that job interview. So kudos out to Hawaii News Now, and they have reporters from the civil beat is there, and various news agencies, and they're asking questions like a job interview. So if you haven't watched it, watch it. I'm telling you, and you know, a lot of people already voted. I know that thousands and thousands of people already voted, but there are some of you, many of us, that are waiting and trying to make that final decision. It's on Hawaii News Now. I'm not sure what channel because they have, I think, three channels. But yeah, just check your guide to tell you. But yeah, it was quite telling, and that's all I'm going to say. You got to watch it yourself. But we have an opportunity that I haven't seen for as long as I can remember. Maybe I really wasn't paying attention, but because of reapportionment, all of the state house seats, all of the state senate seats are open. I know if you've been watching our show, you've heard me say this over and over and over. This is our opportunity, and I really don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Me, I consider myself a true nonpartisan. I will vote for a person, not the party. That's just how I am, and I know people get upset. Oh no, you got to be a Democrat, or hey, you're more of a whatever. You call me what you want. I am a nonpartisan. I vote for a person, not the party. I wish more people did that, because then I think we would get we would get a better mix in our elected office. So, but we have that opportunity now to pick people and that's why it's important to do your research, to go out and study the candidates and get to know their heart, and not just their commercials, and not just the literature. You really want to get to know them, and you can get to know them by reaching out to them. They're all accessible. They should be. If you cannot get in touch with a political candidate, then definitely don't deserve your vote. So again, we try here in our very small way to try to bring on the candidates that are willing to come on and share their story and share their platform and answer some questions. And I see Jill in the green room right now. I bet she's really nervous right now. Like, what is he going to ask me? I wonder what he's going to ask me. She might be. I think she's muted, or I'm muted, so she cannot hear. Because normally when I talk about them in the green room, they start laughing and smiling, and she's not. So she probably cannot hear me. The pandemic really showed which people stuck their neck out to protect us. I think the pandemic is an anomaly. I mean, it's not something that happens all the time. And I know a lot of people will use the pandemic as an excuse of why things didn't get done. But this election is a lot more than just the pandemic. We have a lot of issues. And Jill Tokuda, who was in the state senate for many years, is very familiar with the issues that face our state. And I'm excited to bring her on, and I'm going to bring her on right now because you guys came to see her, not me. Okay, she's getting up now. I'm not sure. I don't want to bring her camera on because she's okay. She's grabbing. I really think she's nervous. Okay, let's bring her on. It is 7:01. All right. Hey Jill, can you hear me, Jill? Yeah, she cannot hear me. I bet she doesn't even know if she's on camera. Yep, that was her purse. That was her purse. Jill, hello, Jill. She doesn't. She has no idea that she's live. I probably should take her off. I better take her off camera because I just have no idea what she's gonna do. Yeah, she's getting. Oh, I see. She's taking out her earphones now. Sorry, folks. Sorry for the delay. That's why she cannot hear me. She didn't have her earphones on. There. Now she has her earphones on. Can you hear me, Jill? Uh, I did take her off of live. Oh gosh. Hey Jill, can you hear me? I know you can you hear me? Smile if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Let's bring her on and see. Hi Jill. Oh, she's having some she can't hear anything.
Hi,
Okay.
Mel.
Oh, I
I
can
don't
hear
seem
you.
to be able to hear anything.
Oh, we can hear you really
Let
good.
me see.
Okay, she'll figure it out. She will figure it out. This is what happens when you do these things live, unrehearsed.
Can you
Um,
know?
I can hear you.
Oh, I think I can hear you, Mel. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. There we go. Yes, I apologize.
No, this happens more times than we would like. We had this issue the other night. We had Ikaika Anderson on, and his computer would not cooperate. He had to go steal his son's computer, and we got him on, and that's fine. We got you on. That's cool. We can hear you. We can see you. How are you
Very
doing,
good.
Jill?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We have 17 days to go, I believe, before the primary. So it's just a
I
little crazy.
I know it's like it. I remember thinking like, man, we got so much more time, and I was just telling the audience before you came on that we have very little time left, and I know a lot of people have voted. There's a lot of people that more people have not voted, and they're still
Right.
trying to gauge their decision, where they're going to go, who they're going to vote for, and I'm encouraging everyone to reach out to the candidates, to get to know the candidates. Don't just vote because of the name or because of the
Right.
beautiful commercials, and
Mm-hmm.
actually have an opportunity to and that's what we try to do, Joe.
Right.
We're gonna spend the next hour learning about Jill Tokuda, and you're gonna have an opportunity to convince our viewers and the many viewers that will watch this in the next week or two, to convince them why we should vote for Jill Tokuda. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this
yeah.
opportunity. And this is a whole lot of fun. And I apologize. I am in an active kitchen living room. So if you see small body, young boys running by, I managed to somehow cook dinner before this. So they're upstairs eating,
Yes.
but there's always seconds. So
That's okay. This is like that's the wonderful thing about this show. It's so informal that it's fun.
yeah,
And
good,
so
good.
anyway, Joe, I'm gonna turn it over to you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. I know you. I think a lot of people may know you, but there is a lot of people that do not know you. So
Yeah.
why don't we start with just an introduction and tell us what you do, who you are, what you've
Yeah.
done, and why are you running for CD2?
No, well, thank you so much for that, and first and foremost, just a big shout out to everyone watching. This is fascinating. I'm going to try not to get too distracted by the chat comments and hellos that I see to the side of me. But, you know, um, I was blessed to have served in the Hawaii State Senate for 12 years, from 2006 to 2018, and represent the hometown where I grew up, Kaneohe and Kailua. I've got two boys, as many folks know and may have seen their adorable pictures on our commercials, Matt and Aiden. And I still can't believe that next week I'm going to be the mother to a seventh grader and a ninth grader. I don't know how they got to be high school age so quickly, but I also find it to be a joy that they're going to be going to the same schools that my husband and I went to. So we're going to be King Intermediate and Castle High School parents. We believe so strongly in our public schools that we made a real strong commitment from before our kids were even born, that they would attend public schools just like we did, and we would step in and support our schools in every possible way. And so for me, it's a very proud moment we're coming up upon next week. And as many folks know from my days in the state senate, and I would often come to Kauai to really go to the schools to talk with principals and teachers, administrators, community about what we need. Education has always been a very important part of my life. And in the state senate, having the honor to be able to chair the education committee, ag Hawaiian affairs, ways and means, that was the big one. And I felt very blessed that, especially during my ways and means tenure, having the chance to come often to Kauai to sit and listen to the needs, and really work with your area lawmakers and your senator and your representatives to really make a difference for Kauai community. That was very important and very special for me. Chairing the labor committee in my final year in the Hawaii State Senate, before I did run for lieutenant governor, as many of you know, in 2018. And we got really, really close. It was a tough race with a lot of friends, including your former mayor over there. But it was a great and humbling experience for me. I think one of the things that I took away from that, and it showed me, was the importance of not just running a campaign, as Mel said, with a lot of commercials and media buys and television ads and all these other things. It really was about making sure that we form long-lasting relationships, friendships. We really were present in the communities. and focus on understanding what the needs are, what the hopes are, and the struggles. And so, that was a great lesson for me. Yes, and a loss, but in terms of really what we have to do to lead well and lead better. And spent the last 4 years back in the private sector. A lot of people know me for being a senator. But the bookends of my career have been in nonprofit executive management and fundraising, as well as running my own small business, a consulting practice as well. And the last few years, especially in the pandemic, has been hard. And so, really working with the state and the counties to track all the federal dollars that have come in and making sure, number one, it got spent and we left nothing on the table, we gave nothing back, but also making sure that we knew where were the cliffs and the pukas, and where do we need to go and be more aggressive, potentially on the money, which to me really kind of set the stage for me now running for CD2. And I will tell you that for the last year, as we started off running for lieutenant governor, and on Mother's Day made the switch to run for Congress. Going to communities statewide, listening to people, talking to people, it became evident to me that what we really needed in our most rural communities across the state was a voice and a champion who understood what it was like, you know, what it was like to have to look at their children every night and worry that when it came time for them to start a family, to get a job, to find a home, that they would not see a future for themselves here in Hawaii. And feeling the sense of urgency we all feel as parents, that, things are tough. And will our kids really be able to make it here? And so for me, running for Congress is through the lens of a parent and a mom wanting the best for our children, all of Hawaii's children, and really wanting to make sure that we act with a sense of urgency, because quite frankly, even before the pandemic, our children, our families were Hawaii's greatest export, leaving the state every day for a life outside of Hawaii, not by choice, but because, they felt that that was the only way they could make it. And I think that's got to stop, and that's why I'm running. And that's the message I get when I go out into the communities, when I come to Kauai and I talk to folks and I listen, more importantly, listen to, what the concerns are, but more importantly, what the hopes are as well. And so really, again, feel very blessed to be on the show today with you, Mel. And I've talked a lot. Careful, you should never give politicians an open mic, because we will talk forever and we'll be done with the hour. But would really like to, answer any questions. Nothing's off the table. Any questions that you folks have, and also hear from your viewers as well what their hopes are, concerns are, what their views are. So.
Thanks, Jill. And CD2 is probably the toughest district in the country, because you have not only rural Oahu, a bigger part of Oahu, but you also have every single neighbor island, which is difficult. Yes. And this logistically, it'll be difficult. Now, you mentioned you did run for lieutenant governor. That would have been a statewide office, but CD2, I don't know. It's just in my mind says it's just a much more difficult position, because of course the travel to DC and the separation from family, but also the responsibility of the federal what's happening in our nation that impacts our state. Why was the switch from running from lieutenant governor? Why did you decide to go to run for CD2?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will tell you this, Mel, you're absolutely right. I've run a statewide race before, and that is tough. And I will tell you, if I had to compare a statewide race to running for CD2, and really being able to, authentically connect and engage with every single island and communities throughout each island and rural Oahu, I will tell you CD2 is a lot harder, a lot more difficult. It might be half the population. And so some might think, oh, it's a lot easier, right? But I will tell you, if you really want to engage and connect on a meaningful level, just making sure you get on that plane and you get out there into every part of the community from Hilo to Hanalei, that's not easy. That's not easy at all. And to get to your question about why the switch from running for lieutenant governor to Congress, I will tell you that the first, that first cracking of the door open for me actually took place at my alma mater, Conway Elementary School. My son was there as a sixth grader this past school year, and the principal asked me to read a book that they were taping to share with the entire school. And he chose the book, and the book he chose was a biography on Patsy Mink. Don't worry, a short one, so I wasn't reading forever. But he asked me to sit, out there outside of what had been my kindergarten classroom and read this book about Patsy Mink. And I was reading this book, it really, really hit me, how so much of where she got to, her journey to Washington, D.C., it really was filled with often not just steps forward, but steps back, but how she overcame those things. And I think the poignant moment for me was when they were talking about how Title IX, her hallmark legislation, her baby really was on the brink of death, on the floors of Congress. But then her daughter had been in a serious car accident, and she had to make the decision, go and be with her daughter who was in the hospital, or make sure that her bill would survive. And she went to be with her daughter. And Title IX for a moment died a brief death by one vote because she was not there to carry it through. And of course, we know, thankfully, looking back at history, it was able to come back, and it has been one of the most pivotal historic pieces of legislation in our country's history, made a difference for young girls and, quite frankly, boys too, across the country, not just in sports, but in medicine and law and academics, everything. But what I saw from that moment is it was almost like Patsy was saying, to be a good mother, to represent Hawaii and our country well, to do right, you don't have to choose. And I think often for many of us with family and looking at offices like Congress, we think that there's a compromise that happens somewhere. But that moment, I realized what Patsy was telling us was her superpower was that every day she lived the life of a mother who had to make difficult choices like everyone else in our community. And I knew at that moment we needed that kind of representation in Congress that looked like us. That when people looked at our delegation, when they looked at Washington, D.C., they could see themselves, and they could see somebody who every day deals with the same struggles, has the same fears and hopes, and has the same concerns, and would be their voice and their champion in Congress. And so for myself, then looking back at the school building where my son was sitting, the same classrooms I sat in, I realized at that moment that while it would be difficult and a challenge, as you mentioned, it's not an easy task by any means. It was something that I had to do. And we made that jump. And as I said, many know we actually made the formal announcement on Mother's Day. And for me, that was the best gift my children and my husband could ever have given me. I mean, they all looked me in the eye and they told me, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a change, but we're right there with you and we support you. You got this. This is your time. And that really meant so much to me. I tell you, Mel, I can't do this without them, but definitely I think for our sons and my husband, they know that I'm doing this for them and for all of our kids and families out there.
Well, I mean, to be successful in politics, you definitely need to have the support of your family. I mean, that
Yes.
just, and especially in this race that you're running.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I commend you for that, for making that decision, because that's a tough decision to make. CD2 has pretty much been a revolving door over the last 10 years. And your commitment is, I'm assuming, I guess I should ask you, what's your commitment to CD2 should you get elected?
Absolutely. My commitment, I tell people going to DC, being part of the Codel, that's a final destination. But I know first and foremost, each and every time, every single day, I've got to earn the ability and the honor to be there from the voters. And so it's never a guarantee. I know I have got to keep coming back time and time again, day after day, month after month, election after election, humbly asking for the confidence, the trust, and the support of voters. And so I will continue to do that. There's no veering off and running for governor or any statewide race. It really is a commitment to seniority within the delegation to make sure that Hawaii has a fighter in there who's going to make sure that, we bring it home. We bring it home for our people and our families.
I've been to DC many, many times, lobbying, working with our delegation. And, my first trip, we still had Senator Inouye Senator Akaka. I mean, those were legends, right? These
Yep,
guys,
they
they
are.
were Congress. I mean, these guys. Senator Inouye was arguably more powerful than the president of the United
Yeah.
States. That's how I saw it, just because of the relationships that he had developed on both
Mm-hmm.
sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
In today's Congress, it's frightening.
Yeah.
The division in Congress, the party division, is
Yep.
really not helping anyone. It's creating problems for our country,
Mm-hmm.
and seniority is so important.
Yeah.
And you were the Ways and Means boss. You were the money person at the state
Yeah.
senate. You were, and I'm just going to say this: uh, this woman right here is the toughest. Don't let her good looks, her little innocent face fool you. She is a tough money manager,
Yeah.
and I can honestly say that she's tough. Uh, but that's your job, right?
Yeah.
As a legislator in charge of multi-billion-dollar budgets. I mean, you know, it's critical.
Yeah.
How do you? What are your expectations getting to Congress as a freshman Congresswoman?
Yeah.
uh, in a delegation that really, I mean, we have, you know, Maisie and Brian's been there for a while, but they're still not at the level of seniority. Our delegation, in congressional terms, is relatively young or new.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What is your plan or your expectations should you be elected when you walk into the halls of Congress?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And thank you for the shout out that I am a tough money manager, because I know we had some, heated conversations too, but and thankfully for you over there really fighting for Kauai and a lot of important issues. And we could see on the same page on many, many of them as well. Because I would tell you, as you well know, and you have done as well, it's the responsibility that we have to our constituents. The ability to make decisions on where $14 billion of our state dollars, our taxpayer dollars, and our budget goes is huge. But it comes with the responsibility of knowing that that came out of your pocket. That's hard-earned money. And so that's not our money. We're making the decisions, but that's your money. And that's really how I looked at it every single day. And I would often sit at this kitchen table right behind me with stacks and stacks of binders on the budget. At the same time, my kids are doing their homework. And while they could bust out their erasers and change an answer if they thought they got it wrong, make a correction, the one thing I knew is if we screwed up on how we spend your money, if we don't spend it right, or we didn't put the money where it should have been, we can't just take out an eraser and make it all go away. And those impacts were real. Those made a difference as to whether or not my kids too could have a kitchen table in Hawaii and see a future for themselves. Those decisions would be on the backs of all of our children's. And so I really took that responsibility very seriously. And I think entering Congress, it's that same weight and responsibility. Also knowing, to your point, that we could be potentially entering a very divided Congress, potentially finding ourselves in a minority position as a freshman, very daunting indeed. But I think that's where the resiliency and tenacity that we all know, growing up in Hawaii, living in Hawaii, that's part of the culture, that we have to plow forward and plow through. And if you think about the leadership style of, our senior senator, our former senior senator, Senator Inouye, Senator Akaka, Representative Mink, and Congressman Abercrombie as well, when they were in there working together, what they really did over those decades to really bring it home for Hawaii. I think we've got to kind of return to a lot of that that style and that way. Senator Akaka's ability to show that aloha was not a sign of weakness at all, was in no way weakness. It was a strength, in fact, a way to engage, a way to really be able to show, how we can all work together, put aside differences in many times and work for the betterment of all of our people. I think that's important. And Senator Inouye's ability to really build bridges across the aisle and really start to take a look at the alliances and friendships and relationships that could exist to the betterment of many of our states, not just Hawaii, but the infamous relationship between Senator Inouye and Senator Stevens, right? Democrat and Republicans, but so many commonalities between our states in terms of both challenges and opportunities. I definitely think that's something that we have to go back to working towards. And the one thing I definitely recognize, having served 12 years in the Hawaii State Senate, you don't show up on day one being a boss. You definitely don't. You know, I'm sure a lot of people wish that that were the situation when they first run for office, but that definitely is not the case. And I think entering with a lot of humility and grace, um, entering with a sharp eye as to how you can strategically create alliances and friendships, understanding your own individual strengths and how you can contribute to the congressional delegation team, as well as your own body as well. Sure, 435, but what is your strength? What is your own superpower, and how are you going to be able to leverage that over time? As you mentioned, this is a long-term haul. You do not suddenly become powerful in Congress overnight. um, I think it's really, stepping into this role with that mindset is really important, that this is about the long term, but it is about how you enter it with humility and strength, and really start to take a look at where your skills and experiences, your life experience, your work experience, your legislative experience can really be an asset to both the CODEL, Hawaii's congressional team, as well as the overall Congress. And I've already started to have some great conversations with folks from around the country, and really see opportunities for us to be able to leverage alliances for the betterment of not just Hawaii, but states across this nation.
Yeah, for our viewers, I'm writing down the questions. I will be asking your questions, but this is my time to ask her. Just because I've known Jill for so long, and I've worked with Jill, and so yeah, forgive me, and we'll get to the questions. But I do want to. This is for my own. Why
Yeah.
would someone want to run for a CD2? But
Yeah.
I'm
And
glad.
I will be at the Bon Dance on Saturday. In case we don't get to your
Oh,
questions, I will be
oh,
eating plenty and I will be dancing. Although it's, no Bon dances in person for the last couple years. I am a couple beats rusty, so I apologize in advance. But I'm
okay. There
really
you have it.
I'm looking forward to being back on Kauai on Saturday.
Yeah, you might regret saying that. You might have a long line of Kauai people there. You mentioned earlier about our largest export was
Yeah.
is our kids,
Yeah.
and both of my son and my daughter both moved to Oregon, and they're
Yeah.
doing extremely well in
Yeah.
Oregon, much better than they could ever have been doing if they had stayed home, and that's sad.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that because I know one of the questions is some of your priority uh, policies that you would want to explore should you get elected to Congress. What would your priorities be? But I do have some questions that popped up right now.
Okay.
Mask mandates. You know, the problem, and we see this all the time on this show because you have local issues, you have
Mm-hmm.
local county issues, and you have state issues, and you have federal issues.
Sure.
And I kind of want to really focus on the federal issues
Mm-hmm.
because that's where you're headed uh, if you're successful. But one
Mm-hmm.
of the one of the key things I think a lot of people are concerned about is COVID, and it
Yeah.
is the numbers are rising, the deaths are rising,
Mm-hmm.
hospitalizations across the country. It's resurfacing, and it's bad. My
Yeah.
brother is suffering right now, and I just spoke to him before the show, and his wife just tested positive 10
Yeah.
minutes before I spoke to him. This thing is very contagious. What
Yeah.
what is your position on the federal government had mask mandates for airline travel, public transportation, and of course the local mask mandates were handled at the state level. But generally speaking, mask mandates for public transportation, airplanes, airports, buses, taxis, as well as schools. What's your take on that as we are experiencing this new surge of Omicron?
Mm-hmm. I know it's a very sensitive issue and personal issue for many, many people. And I've run into folks in the street and had conversations about this. And I would tell you, as somebody who is flying um, to multiple places every week. In fact, I will tell you, tomorrow I'm on Molokai. Then I land on Maui on Saturday morning. I take the Maui to Kauai flight overnight, and then I fly back to Honolulu to then go to Kona by Sunday. All right, so I'm definitely in the airport and airplanes quite a bit. And for myself, at least, I'm always wearing masks in the airport, and I feel a lot more comfortable wearing it in any form of public transportation as well. And I think, right now, what we've really got to do is band together, um, and be responsible so that we can continue life and our economy and kids going to school as much as possible, because the last 2 years has been devastating, both for our economy, for our children in schools, for our overall functioning And so I do think that, especially as we're seeing case counts on the rises, we're seeing variants increasing in severity as well. I was sick a few weeks ago, and I can tell you the symptoms were pretty bad. My husband got it as well. And, it was really difficult for him. And I'm hearing this from a lot of different folks out there, that it's not mild symptoms. And these are fully vaccinated, boosted individuals. Um, if it means that we have got to, band together and wear those masks, especially when we're in very crowded, confined places for periods of time, like airplanes and public transportation, then I think that's what we've got to do to be able to keep each other safe and to you know, keep the, life going as it has been, both from an economic standpoint. But I'm always very, concerned about our schools and making sure our kids can continue to be in person and be in school and learning and engaging with their classmates and their teachers as well. And so I do think that we've got to be mindful that this is somewhat the new normal, and we've got to, have some added responsibility in order for us to be able to continue life as normal as well.
So you would say you would agree with the state's decision to lift the mask mandates in school and allow the parents to make that decision for their children?
I think the state has to be mindful of the point when the case counts become too high. And especially, I would think this is one where data is really helpful, and accurate data and tracking is very helpful. And I don't think we're doing it, quite frankly, enough on that front as well. But if we're starting to see schools as epicenters of outbreak, for example, then that's where we would have to take action to maybe consider going back to the mask mandate. As of right now, we're not seeing schools, and granted, we are in the summer months and kids aren't in school, but we're not seeing schools as the epicenter of these outbreaks. And so I do think that the ability to have, the parents make the decision is fine. I know my kids wear their masks when they are at school. But should we find it that our youngest children, in some cases that aren't being boosted, are only now getting fully vaccinated, if we find outbreaks in our school settings where our kids are getting sick and putting them at risk, then I think we do need to look potentially going back to some kind of mandate for our students so that they can stay in school. First and foremost, I think we've got to do everything we can to really keep them in person. The learning loss that we experienced over the last 2 years of having them virtual or in a hybrid situation, it doesn't end just because they're back in class. This is going to take years of us continue to support and work with our students. It's also about keeping, our educators, our school faculty, personnel there safe as well. So I do think that it's something that, again, requires constant monitoring and data, accurate data and timely data as well. And I think in that area, we've got to do better.
Yeah, and that's lacking here in Hawaii and many other states. The reporting systems. We have some states that do very well, still doing daily reporting. But overall, because of home testing, we know that all the counts are underreported, and that is creating a problem. So I understand. The other question was, financial assistance for the middle class.
Yeah.
The pandemic, for going on 3 years now, affected a lot of people, and not just business owners, and a lot of the middle class people suffered. Were forced to use credit or savings to get through for whatever reason. Do you see that as a possibility to secure federal funds for assistance for the middle class? I know it sounds pretty rotten to have the middle class. I don't even think we have a middle class anymore. You're either poor or you're rich. But for that middle class, do you see the possibility, or is it a discussion worth having to possibly see some financial aid for our middle class?
No. You're absolutely right, because if you think about even before the pandemic, I'm going to be real honest, right? We weren't doing so rosy then either. We were failing a lot of people. In so many cases, families, workers, individuals are finding that they're not poor enough to qualify for a lot of the supports, and they're not rich enough to get by either. I mean, it's this growing gap group that we have that are finding themselves struggling to the point of either having to leave or falling over the brink, finding themselves homeless, finding themselves in an impossible situation, not being able to care for their family, put food on the table. And so I do think that we have to really consciously look at how we're providing supports to what I call this growing gap group, working men and women out there trying to make it and just can't. And not qualifying, not being poor enough, sadly, I hate to say it that way, but not being eligible for a lot of the supports that might exist that could put food on the table and could help them with shelter. Um, but quite frankly, can't work enough jobs. I mean, how many people we know work well more than one job? And they're barely being able to make it by as well. And so, when you take a look at some of the really good programs that came out that started to give people a little breathing room and relief, things like the child care tax credit last year. I was working very closely with some, philanthropic funders to support organizations to help connect people with federal funds like the Emergency Rent and Utility Fund. And in talking with providers and talking with folks that are applying for assistance, one of the things that actually kind of gave them a little pause from worrying about would I get evicted, could I pay for my water and my electricity, was this childcare tax credit. Every month being able to count on the fact that you're going to get a couple $100s more, for your children to take care of their needs. You started to see them being able to plan, being able to pay off a little bit of the credit card debt that they'd gone into because they couldn't pay the electricity bill, or food, being able to start covering their basic needs. And I think that is so critical that we start that up again. And then one of the big gaps that I do think still exists is the fact that we did have, for example, emergency rent and utility support. And quite frankly, I think we've got to reactivate that and get that out continuously now, even because we're not through this. And so many are struggling to really be able to afford their rent and the water and the electricity. But one of the gaps that I also saw that really impacted this working class, this gap group that you're talking about, is enough funds to help people pay for their mortgage and their utilities if they were a homeowner. You shouldn't be penalized because you actually have a mortgage and a home. So many struggle to even get to that point. And now with the economy being what it is and a lot of the struggles and inflation and costs, being able to continue to pay that mortgage has become very difficult for many. Being able to pay the electricity bill and the water right now has become difficult for many homeowners. And I think it's many of those folks in this gap group, this working class, that could just use a little extra help to get by, because God forbid they lose their home. The lights get turned off. The families that literally would go into the dark with this. I think these are the kinds of supports that we've got to ramp up. And there were some supports for homeowners for this area, but very minimal compared to those that were getting rent support. So I agree. When we take a look at this growing gap group, when it comes to the most basic needs, like being able to have money in your pocket to be able to pay for whether it's your mortgage or your rent, food on the table, we've really got to do more to support them, because if they do fall into poverty, it's so difficult, as we know, to pull yourself out. And I think that's incumbent on us to really start to address the needs of all of our people, our working families, our working individuals out there who are just struggling so hard to get by, but really have no ability to tap into programs that exist right now.
Yeah, and there's no sign that it's going to get better. I think the technically we're in a recession, right? We had two periods where our GDP, two consecutive periods where the GDP was in the negative. Yeah. Which I think that's the technical term for a recession. I mean, to deny that we have a recession, it doesn't help anyone. I think the fact of the matter is it's not going to get better for a while, and the struggle will continue. So the more help we can get, the better. And again, I'm going to run through these questions. And rail.
Okay.
Rail, what started off as a city and county project years and years ago with commitments and promises, now has become not only a city and county project, it's become a state project, because now, obviously the tax money from the neighbor islands now go help rail. And it's a federal issue because they are banking on receiving the federal monies to complete this project. What are your thoughts? And if you're elected, you're going to be in Congress, which may have an impact on what happens with the future funding of the program or the project. What's your take on that?
Yeah. And I'm trying my best not to distract myself and scroll through all these comments as well. And I definitely see a lot of these comments about rail and TAT and all these other things. But as many folks do know, or may recall, it's been a number of years now. When I was raised in Means Chair, I really took a hard stand on the rail projects in terms of really holding people accountable to the costs and the cost overruns. And I support rail as a means of transportation equity for many of our workers and families that need to get to and from work. And quite frankly, now, especially as we know with the cost of gas, and it's especially hard on Kauai as well, where you've got to travel potentially long distance from where you can afford to live and where a job might be. This is really making it almost impossible. So for some people to even continue to work as a result of the cost just to get there. So I do support rapid transit, a multimodal transportation system for this kind of transportation equity. That being said, I don't believe it should ever be a blank check that's going to rest on the backs of our kids as well. And I've always been one, as you started this conversation off, saying I'm a tough money manager, asking the questions that need to be asked, because again, this is your taxpayer dollars. To me, taking a look at the situation, this, like our economy, is a long haul as well. And when I take a look at some of the potential options, because there's more costs coming up just to operate and maintain the system, my opinion is, quite frankly, and I think there might be some that disagree with me, is that to me, the transit accommodation tax that had been going to the counties should be returned to the counties. And I think, Mel, you might recall from our conversations, I have always strongly believed that, I think when I left office, it was about a little over 103 million that was being divided up and shared between the counties at that time, coming from the transit accommodation tax. I tried to actually increase that number to give more to the counties, but I think that actually should be returned to the counties as part of the share and the burden that they bear from tourism as well, and the impacts that they cover. And to me, then the 3%, TAT, sales tax, whatever you want to call it, that was, granted by the legislature, that the city and county of Honolulu has taken up, that should be used to cover the rail costs. It would give you a significant infusion of cash, but also the ability to bond over time. And then they wouldn't be taking what they're gaining from that now to cover what has been a deficit from the loss of that 103 million or so that had previously been given and shared amongst the counties from the transit accommodation tax. So I do think that there's a way forward. I do think it means that both the state and the county have to talk about the sharing of tax dollars that do come in. But, given a strong plan to be able to really look at funding for rail over time, it would also provide the congressional delegation with the fuel to be able to go and also, fight for additional funds, both for rail as well as all of our transportation projects statewide. I think better than anyone, there are so many transportation needs that exist, especially on our neighbor islands, in our rural communities. And we've got to go fight for that money as well. And we've got to get those projects funded and actually completed as well. So,
well, if you get elected to Congress, I hope you'll be sitting on a transportation or infrastructure committee because
me too.
You as far as holding people accountable, I think that's an understatement for you. The whole TAT battle was a mess. And yeah, I think the legislature probably disagrees with you about returning the money, but I can guarantee you that the 1 point whatever million residents agree with you, especially on the neighbor islands. So
yeah.
All right. Campaign finance reform.
Oh.
This is not my questions. I'm on the viewer question. So,
No.
Again, nothing. We try to ask. I know there's a lot more coming up, but we're going to do the best we can with the time we have. But she'll be at the Bond Dance on Saturday. So
okay, yeah, I'll be in the flying saucer line because I guarantee you're gonna have one line. So
hey, they're gonna be. They've created this andagi with mochi inside.
Okay. So I'm Okinawan, right? So I've never met an andagi I could say no to.
Well, this is they've been practicing and sharing it with people. I had the opportunity to try one.
Yeah.
Off the first batch. I think that is going to replace a lot of the, where people go to Bon Dance for the flying saucers, or this thing is going to become the next thing at Bon Dances. So anyway, go check it out when you get there.
I will. I've never heard of an andagi with mochi inside. So this is definitely something.
Yeah.
Okay, so
campaign
campaign
finance
finance reform.
reform. You know,
Yeah,
I know as of late
yeah,
between your race and the lieutenant governor's race. I mean, I'm sorry, the governor's race. There's been a lot of hoo-hoo,
yeah,
but putting that aside, and you can discuss it if you want. But
yeah,
what is your feeling? I mean, I think campaign financing now has gone out of control.
yeah,
The ability for people to utilize PACs, these committees that are formed that have no limits, and
yeah,
it, I just want to hear your take on campaign finance reform.
yeah. That's actually a very personal a comment for me. While it sounds very technical, and policy oriented, as somebody who's been on the receiving end of a number of independent expenditures in the millions, to me, this is the death of democracy when we start to focus on money and not people. When we allow money, um, especially dark money, outside influences from out of this state to start controlling and trying to impact and influence our elections. This really cuts to the core of who we are, and our ability as residents and people of Hawaii to make decisions for ourselves. And just recently, you might have seen in the news, and probably on your television sets as well, a number of attack ads that have come out. Some for other races, but we've had one against me as well with a lot of gross mischaracterizations about my record. And I'm going to take a few seconds here to just put that plug in here as well. During the 12 years that I was in the state Senate and part of Senate leadership, we helped to pass some of the strongest gun laws in the country, whether it was red flag laws, taking out bump stocks and trigger activators, making sure people who did not have guns would not have guns. I'm really proud of that record. To have it disparaged like that by a mainland organization, putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last weeks of the campaign to try to mislead people. But more importantly as well, and what was most disgusting to me, to try to politicize a national tragedy like Uvalde, and to dare have that video in connection with someone like myself who cares so much about our families. I found that disgusting. Disgusting that they would even stoop to that level. Again, to use these tragedies, these deaths, um, you know, to try to politicize a campaign, to try to influence a campaign. That's not Hawaii. There's no place for that kind of politicking in Hawaii. And I think unless we really start to look at campaign finance reform at the federal level with Citizens United and these super PACs, these dark money operators, and at the state level as well, again, taking out these influences, putting money at the center of the discussion and not people. Unless we do something about it, sadly, we're losing control of our state and who represents us. And so for myself, it's always been about running a strong, clean campaign. When I was running for lieutenant governor, I was committed to public financing to cap the amount of money that we receive and to seek small dollar donations. And in this election for Congress, we're not taking corporate PAC money as well. Again, to me, it should be about people first, not the money. And until we really look at these reforms, we're going to continue to see these kinds of things. And in our race in particular, we've got over $1 million coming in to try to influence your vote. And quite frankly, the only thing that can beat out over $1 million, because I can tell you, I can't raise $1 million in 2 weeks right now. The only thing that can combat that and say absolutely not, Hawaii's not for sale, is this right here, is a ballot. And that's really what I'm focused on in these last 2 weeks of the campaign, is earning the trust, the support of people that when they open this ballot up and they see my name, I want them to see themselves as well in the future that we want together. And so it's something we got to do, Mel. Absolutely have to do.
I mean, 100% support with that. I, for the life of me, and it's been happening for a long time, but I think this was the year that it got exposed,
Yeah.
because of the amount of outside money
Yeah.
coming into our state election system. It what I don't get is how do we, as Congress, as our state, how do we allow this to happen? I mean, I, as an individual, I am limited. I can only donate so much to a
Yep.
candidate.
Mm-hmm.
You, as a candidate, can only receive so much per person, but these PACs have unlimited opportunities. They don't have to disclose the information that I got to disclose or you got to disclose as a candidate. These PACs don't have to do it, and they can flood listen, watch the TV commercials now, and you see all these negative ads coming in, and you look on the bottom, yeah, it has
Hmm.
some name of an organization that you have never heard of. They're not
Yeah.
even here in Hawaii. Some of our race, the governor's race, the amount of money that is coming in to some of these
Yeah.
candidates from the outside.
Hmm.
Why in the world would someone who lives in Iowa or anywhere else in the mainland have that much juice in the game that they would be willing to give $6,000 from the husband and $6,000 from the wife for a governor's race in Hawaii? Anyone can tell me that they don't expect anything in return, they're dreaming.
Yeah.
So I hope that should you get elected and you get to Congress, and after you know earn your stripes a little bit, don't go out firing from the first day.
No, no, no. I said you got to go with humility,
Yeah,
right? And
but at
it's a
some point, but
yeah,
when you have a Congress like we have, that's they're embedded, they rely on these PAC donations, they rely on these dark money.
yeah,
Um, how do you change that? I mean,
yeah,
I think it's going to take the people, and I
yeah,
think that's one of the positives that we can say coming out of this campaign season right now, as we are experiencing. I think people are like me. We're fed up
yeah,
about watching commercials from somebody on the mainland beating up on a candidate. I think
yeah,
some of our candidates in past elections learned the hard way. They went dirty and they lost.
yeah.
And these PACs have absolutely no place in Hawaii, absolutely none. And I hope Congress or our state legislature can pass bills that will eliminate any kind of outside
Hmm.
funding coming in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not Hawaii, it's not Pono, it's not right.
No, and it's not helping people. At the end of the day, we should be running for office to serve, to really make sure that our communities are stronger, that our families, our workers are taken care of, and nothing about the money coming in from outside with questionable interests, with unknown interests, with no ties or connections, quite frankly, to Hawaii. That doesn't help our families. That doesn't keep our kids home. That doesn't give your kids, Mel, a chance to come home, and start a life here, live a life here where you can play with your grandchildren nearby. That's the thing, is it's like a shadow candidate in the room when you have so much of this money coming in. And we don't know what their intentions are for Hawaii. They are not Hawaii. And the bottom line is we have got to stop this vicious cycle, whether it's negative attacks, whether it's mainland outside money, whether it's super PAC hits and IEs. We got to stop this. We got to stop this right now, because this does not make Hawaii stronger, make Hawaii better. It does not. It does not represent us and who we are.
Well said. We got about 10 minutes left. The other question on here was, and I know this education, schools, a big part of your passion.
Yeah.
I remember going to school, and there was a free lunch program, reduced lunch
Hmm.
program,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing from parents now, between school lunches and buses,
Expensive.
the kids, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right now in Kauai, this has nothing to do with the state, nothing to do with Congress. It's a state issue, but a good friend of mine who's actually watching tonight, uh, she lives way up in the homesteads, way up.
Hmm.
No more school bus.
Yeah.
They don't have enough bus drivers, so they claim. And when she called the bus transportation office, they told her, they had the nerve to tell her, "You live close enough where your kid can walk to school."
Ugh.
Now, I mean, I wish I was the governor, because I would fire his okole for saying that. You don't tell a
Exactly.
parent or a
No.
grandparent who's calling because they don't have any way to get to school,
Yeah.
because of the shifts that the parents work. They do not have
Yep.
an opportunity. So I know that's not a congressional issue, but the free lunch program, federal dollars coming in to help offset or provide free lunches for more of our kids. Right now we talked about this period where a lot of people are struggling.
Yep.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when we take a look at the cost to send our kids to public school, and I know this as a parent of two kids going to public school, whether it be the cost of lunch, potentially transportation, and we didn't have that, but also one of the big cost drivers that I've raised, red flags about too, is after school care. A plus was created, and even the before school program was created so that we didn't have latchkey kids, right? As you might recall. that would be staying at home by themselves, potentially in unsafe situations while mom and dad both working, would come home later on. But if you consider the costs right now of care per child for something like A plus, they do an amazing job. And I know it's barely what they are paying is what they're charging, but it's 125. The last I checked, the last I paid, and it probably went up since that point, $125 per child. And if you have more than one child, imagine what you're paying every month at that particular time, right? $250, 375. Now tack on school lunch on top of that. Now potentially bus transportation. It gets very difficult, and you'd hate for it to be a mother or a father having to decide, well, should I just let them go home? And I remember when we had one of the increases, I had my kids were there at Coney Elementary, and I talked to a few parents that said, well, it's kind of expensive, so we're just going to have them, walk home. It's close enough, and stay there until we get home. So we've really got to look at whether it's also looking at all opportunities at the federal level with after school care funds and school feeding funds to make sure that a lot of our kids aren't going without or compromising on their care. I think that's critical. And I would even go so far, and one of the programs that I really pushed as well was not just the free lunch program, but the breakfast program. How are we making sure that I would actually have it built into the school day, especially for elementary school, because there's so much of a stigma sometimes that comes with that. And so many kids come to school right when the bell rings at that point for many, many different reasons. They haven't eaten. To really start the day right for all of us, I would actually, advocate, and we've had programs piloted where, breakfast was part of that morning homeroom. So that we make sure that all of the kids have that right start. And it's not something that costs them, that we build into those. We get, the free breakfast program for these kids so that they can start breakfast the right way. Sadly, we know for many of these kids that lunch they have, and if they're fortunate, breakfast, that's the only meals that they'll really get. Solid, nutritious meals that they'll get in a day, and they'll go without on a weekend. So how can we really support our kids to give them that free and appropriate education, which, by the way, includes bus transportation to and from school? It doesn't matter if you think they can walk the mile to and from their home to school. That's complete BS to me. And it really highlights to me the needs of Congressional District 2 in a rural community. If you ask me, access is such a huge issue. And so when I talk to people about why I want to fight and what I want to fight for, basic access to things that so many people take for granted, access to healthcare, mental health services, it does depend on your zip code. And too many in our rural communities go without or have to wait long periods because they just can't get it. Access to education and workforce opportunities, again, to your point, whether it's bus transportation, or other programs, too many, it's a matter of where you live, and that should not be the case. Even preschool, which I've been a very passionate advocate for, and access to housing that we can afford. I don't even like calling it affordable housing anymore, I'll be honest, because it's not affordable. That's a myth. But housing people can afford, from a starter home or apartment to senior assisted living. These are things that sadly, in so many of our communities, especially in our rural communities, access is a huge barrier and an issue. And we've got to fight harder to make sure that we put every single available federal dollar, state and county dollar, leverage private money as well to make sure our people are taken care of. And access is not something based on your zip code anymore. And for me, that's what I want to fight for, that fair share, so that we aren't talking about kids going hungry, kids not being able to get to school, or having to walk to school in, quite frankly, what could be potentially dangerous situations, or just not going to school. We've got to fight to get our fair share of all these resources that you and I know exist and are out there, and make sure we bring it home for our state.
Awesome. That was a quick hour. We got about 5 minutes left. Jill, I did want to give you an opportunity to share your priorities heading, should you be elected, heading to Congress. What are your list of your top priorities? And then you can go right into sharing with our viewers why we should vote for you. So yeah. This is you. It's all you.
No. Okay, I thought we'd have like a rapid fire question where you ask me what my favorite plate lunch was, or my first stop when I hit Kauai, where I go. But
well, what is your favorite? What is your favorite food place on Kauai? That is.
Now I'm gonna get in trouble with everybody.
Well, okay, yeah. That might not. Let's get because that's not a fair question.
But I will tell you that oftentimes I find myself at Tip Top and I get the, oh gosh, now I'm blanking out. It's the special omelet that has
That's
Vienna
the Kunimura
sausage.
special.
That
The
one,
Kunimura
yes,
special. Yeah.
the Kunimura special. That is my favorite, and I obviously can only get it on Kauai. So between there or actually being able to go get beef stew with chili pepper water at Danny's for breakfast in the morning, those are pretty good ways to start the day. So, okay,
All
with
right.
that,
Okay.
priorities and why I hope people will humbly consider me when they're looking at their ballot for CD2. I kind of just mentioned a little bit about it in terms of access. To me, I really think about it for all of us when we look at our families, when we look at our children's, what do we want for them? What's the most basic thing? And as I've sat and listened and talked to so many folks throughout Kauai about what their hopes are, what their concerns are, it really does boil down to how can we make Kauai, our Hawaii, affordable? How can we really start to see a future for ourselves here? How can we make sure that access to the most basic things that we need to take care of our loved ones, to take care of ourselves, to really be able to feel like we can make it? How do we make sure that that is available in every single part of our state, in all of our communities, in all of our islands? That's really critical. And to me, and I'll pause a little bit more on this. When I talked about education and workforce, I talked about housing at all levels, including senior housing, which is so critical, and rentals for folks starting out. But to me, thinking about the times that we're in now, right now, healthcare and mental health services, even before the pandemic, these were difficult. This was so difficult to come by. And I think even more so, it's just been highlighted through the pandemic, our ability to access healthcare. Folks take for granted that so many in our islands have to get on a plane if they can even afford it, rent a car, and be able to get that appointment, which might be months later, by the way, if even that. Um, the fact that mental health services taking care of our well-being, um, it's stigmatized, it's shame at some points, but it exists in all of our communities. And it's tragic when it's unmet, those needs, when they don't have access to care and services. And we've got to do better, in those particular areas. When we look at our rising homeless populations in our communities right now, we look at the root cause of it. So often, it's not just economic, it's mental health, it's substance abuse. All of these things need to be addressed with equity in mind, that it's not about where you live if you have access. It's got to be available absolutely everywhere. And there are federal funds, our fair share, that we've got to then go fight for. So my priority really is that when we go out there to DC, when we fight for CD2, it's making sure that all of our families, all of our workers, all of our people have equal access and a chance, an equal chance to really be able to not just survive in Hawaii, but really thrive and see a life for themselves and future generations of their family right here in this place that we call home. And, for me, my real commitment is to be present. If I've learned first and foremost anything, it's that, you cannot just airdrop in and expect to really know how things are. You've got to spend time and develop relationships. And I've been so humbled over the years serving in the state Senate and others to really have been able to, find some very strong relationships and friendships on Kauai. And actually, I'll be remiss before this hour gets up to not, really mention to folks that Kauai gave my family its start. When our Tokuda family immigrated from Okinawa, Gushikawa, Okinawa, we landed on Kauai in Puhi Camp. And I will tell you that my heart, and that's why my heart has always been there for Kauai, because had it not been for us coming to Kauai, working in Puhi Camp, my Tokuda family, my great grandparents having, 10 children there, I would not be where I am today without them. I know the Issei and Nisei that struggled so hard really opened the doors for me. And so giving back to Kauai, having a relationship with people on Kauai, fighting for Kauai, it's personal. It's personal because it goes back all the way to the first generation of my family. And I'm Yonsei, I'm fourth generation. And so I hope the people of Kauai always know that I have made myself an unofficial, resident of Kauai, because that's where it all started for us over 100 years ago. Kauai was our home. Kauai gave us a chance, quite frankly, and I would not be here had it not been for that. And so for me, this is about fighting for CD2, fighting for every person in CD2, helping, helping us see a future for ourselves. And really, at the end of the day, I hope, again, as I said earlier, when you pick up your ballot, and there's a lot of names on here and there's a lot of choices, even for CD2. I hope that you won't just see my name on this ballot. I hope when you look at my name, I really want you to see yourself, and I really want you to see the future that we all want for our kids, for our families, together, and how we're going to work together to get there. So, I'm really humbled to be able to have had this hour with you. It went a lot faster, Mel, you're right, than I ever would have expected, but have just really enjoyed the conversation, the questions, and yes, not only will I be at the Bone Dance, many of you have seen me out there in the community over these past, months as well visiting. I will be back as often as I possibly can get on the plane and put my 2 feet over there on Kauai. So you've got my commitment that I will always be there to fight for Kauai, to listen to your concerns and work with you, stand side by side with you to make sure that the people of Kauai have what they need to not just survive, but really thrive. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jill. I gotta say it's much more enjoyable being here in this discussion than it was to have to go visit you for money from the state. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I hope our viewers did as well. How can they? What's your website, or what's the best way for people to learn more about you?
Absolutely. They can visit us at tokudaforhawaii.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well, where at the very least you'll get a lot of really cute pictures, sometimes of my kids, a lot of our supporters everywhere we are throughout the state, including a lot of great pictures on Kauai as well. So please follow us, tokudaforhawaii.com or at tokudaforhawaii on social media.
Thank you again, Jill. Good luck to you. There's, I think, there's 13 plus 3, 16 days left for the primary election. Very important election for our state. Again, folks,
Yes.
if you did not get your ballot, call your elections office. Message me if you have to. If you don't know who to call, just shoot me a quick private message. I'll make sure we get you connected to the right elections office so you can get your ballots. It's important you get your ballots. It's important that you learn of the candidates, and it's especially important that you vote. Okay, people.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Hey, we won't have a show tomorrow night because we moved it to tonight. Monday night we have Cara Flores, candidate for county council on Maui. That'll be interesting. It'll be the first time we have a county council candidate on, and that'll be interesting. So that'll be on Monday night. And on Wednesday, Dr. Kaohi Manu Akiona will be back after a long hiatus from our show. She'll be back on Wednesday night to give us an update on what's happening on the Big Island. So again, Jill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Work hard. Good luck. And we will be in touch.
Yes, look forward to it. Look forward to seeing everyone out there on Kauai.